this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how to hit your first 200 kilo deadlift and beyond. So if you've been training for some years and you struggle to see the numbers increase on your deadlifts and you're wondering where it is you're going wrong, well, look no further, because in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to hit your first 200 kilo deadlift and beyond. And as somebody who has increased his deadlift from under 100 kilos up to 292.5 at 305 kg to the knee, I think I know what I'm talking about. But in this video, I'm not actually going to talk about my journey. That would be too easy. Instead, we're actually going to look at my client Owen here, who used to have to grind 150 kg deadlifts before working with me, and now since has pulled 200 kgs in competition. So how did he do it? And more importantly, how can you do it too? Well, let's break down the blueprint that you can copy and put to use right away and watch your deadlift blow up over the coming weeks. But before we do that, let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Hayes. I'm an ex-engineer and I'm one of the strongest online coaches that you know of. I've been running my successful online coaching business since 2023, and I've been helping people just like you get in the shape of their lives, one session at a time. And my aim for these videos is simple: to give you the best up-to-date information out there without you getting confused with all the cesspit that is social media, where online fitness wankers feed off your confusion and try to make a quick buck in the process. And look, I'm not your coach and I'm not your dad, but I can for sure help you out, because I can use from my own past experiences to help you overcome yours, so you can get in the shape of your life in a fraction of the time that it took for me. Let's begin. So when we began working together, I didn't tell Owen to just pull more often. Maybe he does that in coppers, but in the gym, not so much. He needed to learn how to pull an extra 50 kg. But I straight up told him, you need to earn the right to add that weight to the bar. And the same applies for you. So when we first started, I used the first 4 weeks to track a few bits. Technique assessment to see how his deadlifts looked. Mobility limitations, like in his glutes or his hamstrings, getting into a good starting position, his bracing, and if he had any weak links, like in his back, or maybe his grip was the limiting factor. I don't know anything about that. But besides being a Chelsea fan, he actually didn't have too much red flags popping out. And from that, it was easy to start building his first training block, a hypertrophy phase to build posterior chain size and strength. So this is the part where most people tend to go out on their own, or else just simply ask ChatGPT to whip them up a training plan. Now, to be fair, most generic training plans online are just fine, but what they cannot do is determine what will be an appropriate weight selection on a week-to-week basis. It's also not great at managing volume and intensity over the weeks. But that's where having a coach comes into play. And a good one, like myself, ask their clients to send them videos of them lifting every week, which is exactly what I did with Owen, who would send me videos of his training sessions each week, from which I could give him form feedback and weight recommendations on what he should attempt the following week. And we did this as we progressed through the training block. Based on his training feedback, we were hitting hip hinge movements twice per week, usually a variation of a deadlift and a variation of another hip hinge movement, like a barbell RDL or single leg dumbbell RDL. And we would then vary the volume. And as the weeks progressed, we actually found that he was able to handle much more training volume. But for someone else, the opposite might be true, especially when you're hitting, say, over 80% of your estimated 1 rep maxes. But that's the joys of having a coach in your corner that is able to adjust these things. So frequency and variation are important here, as is the weekly targets to aim for, rather than just randomly maxing out every odd week. So going back to the point of form feedback, this is probably the most important aspect of online coaching. Having someone with an experienced pair of eyes have a look at your training, break it down, see what's working, and be able to progress from there. So like what I said, I got on to film his top sets every week. From that, then we could identify any sticking points, such as just off the floor or his lockout. Small cues that could create big changes to his efficiency. For example, shoulders into his back pockets was a really effective cue for Owen to create that upper back tightness just as he pulls the bar off the ground. We could make sure that his bar path, that his setup was consistent every week, and that the actual weights that he was lifting every week were within the confines of what we recommended each week too. So we know that, like, he's not 3 weeks into a training program and he's failing reps due to technical failure, due to just strength in general, or if it's moving too slow, maybe it's time to suggest a deload. But we wouldn't have been able to do any of that adjustments had he not recorded his top sets and send them on to me in the first place. Which is why I highly recommend any of you to record your top sets and have them looked at by an experienced individual, or even send them on to myself. I can give you some form feedback for free. How's that? So most progressive overload will happen between 4 to 6 weeks on typical trainer programs, which is completely fine. I personally have my clients do 5-week training blocks. But just because Owen was at the end of a 5-week training block does not mean that he has to max out at the end of it. And if people believe you have to absolutely max out at the end of every training block, all you end up doing is frying your central nervous system, risking failing more reps than usual, risking injury, and all that unnecessary fatigue will just end up creeping into your next training block, limiting your long-term potential. Speaking of which, we would usually integrate a deload week at the end of each training block for Owen too. Allow that central nervous system fatigue to flush out of the body, allow him to just manage his recovery, so that way as each training block began, he was as fresh as he could be to start building momentum again. So whether you're planning on competing or want to see what you're truly capable of in the gym, it's important for you to tailor your training to just that. And this is what's known as a peaking block. So we will decrease the volume, increase specificity, big word, reduce accessories in some cases, and if you're competing, practice commands and select openers. So by the time we get to the end date, we know we have what it takes. It's just simply a matter of execution, which is exactly why Owen wanted to compete in the first place. Having an end date forces intent. So in Owen's case, we knew for sure that he was going to compete on the 21st of February. He had to be at the gym, he had to weigh in on time, and he had to have his kit checked before he could compete to make sure that it was official. And having an end date like that is just an added layer of accountability. But like I said, it doesn't need to be a competition per se, but tell yourself in X weeks times, I am going to go into the gym, I'm going to test out my strength and see do I have what it takes. Even run your own mock meet in the gym. So with that added accountability and know that you have to perform on the day, just gives you that little bit more fire in the belly. And once we have the work put in the weeks leading up to it, we know that we should be just fine. Big difference between him chasing numbers in the gym versus stepping out onto the platform in front of dozens of people cheering him on to pull him. So the game plan for us was to open with a comfortable 170 kg, which he absolutely smoked. Great piece of advice that I got from my powerlifting coaches: open light, finish heavy. And with that opener out of the way and his remaining nerves out of the system, we went an extra 15 kg for a second attempt, 185 kilos. And at this point, I usually have a quick conversation with my client to see how they felt after that lift. But to be honest, in this case, there wasn't too much of a conversation. I just looked at him, I said 200, and he just nodded, and we moved on. He knew exactly what he came there for. He wanted to hit that 200 kg. Everything was lining up for this moment. So he walked out for his third attempt. He absolutely smoked 200 kg and walked off the platform with 15 kilo PB and officially chalking down that 200 kg milestone. Job done and fair play. So if there's anything you learned from this video, let it be this. This is exactly what a structured program looks like in a world full of lads going in every Friday to their local gym and just maxing out and not seeing any more plates being added to the bar. Then they're wondering why they're stuck and they can't seem to get any stronger. Well, now you've the tools in your toolbox to do just that. You now should know the importance of laying that foundation, of programming to tackle any sticking points, and the importance of getting constant feedback with either a coach or just checking in with yourself. And this is exactly what happens when you stop pricking about in the gym and you just start training with some intent. And remember, Owen wasn't special. He was still playing Gaelic football 3 times per week with his local team. He was still drinking pints at the weekend, but he just followed the system and he executed it brilliantly. And now that you know how Owen did it, you can now do it too. If you enjoyed that video, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment as to what weights you're struggling with and see if I can help you with that. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.